Well, welcome back to our continuing coverage of the Students for Liberty conference in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
I'm here with none other than Spike Cohen, and I'm going to steal your joke because I think it's hilarious. Spike is the bronze medalist for the vice presidential position in the 2020 election cycle, which means he ran as the vice presidential candidate for the U.S. Libertarian Party. Spike, this has been, to me, we're now on the last day. It seems like it's been a tremendously successful conference, but a lot of people are pretty cynical about conferences. Big talk fest, that's all it really is. What's the value of something like this?
Oh, well, the first value right off the bat is just having an opportunity for us to talk with these students, because a little bit of background, Students for Liberty is just that. It is thousands, I think tens of thousands of students who are fighting for liberty in over 100 countries across the planet. And over 60 of those countries are being represented by students here from across the planet, and getting to talk to them and hear their stories and having them have a chance to talk with each other. And you're seeing these kids, I mean, I'm in my 40s there, I can call them kids, these, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds that are networking and talking about how they're going to work together and synergize countries like the Czech Republic and Bolivia and Argentina and Georgia and all countries around the world, and the U.S. and Canada and Australia and everything else, New Zealand, and they're going to work together. And they've met here, and they are networking, and they're also meeting like some of the leaders in the liberty movement. It's incredibly powerful. Is it a talk fest? Yeah, but they're talking about how to change the world and then planning it out. And I think it's incredible.
Yeah. Now, your own personal CV is fascinating, and I recommend anyone that's not familiar with Spike's work, look him up, have a look. But I want to talk about this vice presidential run specifically, because you ran for the Libertarian Party. Obviously, that's because the Libertarian Party is aligned with your values. Yeah. But you must have known your chances of winning were
essentially zero.
Zero. Yeah. So what was the purpose? What was the value of doing that anyway?
Well, first of all, there's a few values there. I think the biggest value for what I was trying to do was spread the libertarian message and say that there is an alternative. And yes, because of what the two-party system has set up, the likelihood of us winning is very low for a variety of reasons that I won't even bother getting into. But for many, many reasons, the likelihood is low. But I wanted to be able to provide a stark contrast from what Republicans and Democrats are offering. It's the same thing that the LP is doing in Australia. Yeah. They're showing that what do they call them, the lab libs, that the Labor and
the Uni Party,
the Uni Party, we call them that too. I call them the Republicrats here, but it's the same thing. It's you've got this kind of two-headed uniparty, and whichever side wins, you lose.
Yeah.
And so my thing is, okay, if you vote for us and we don't win, then you were going to lose anyway. But you at least voted for something that aligned with your values and what you wanted to see government look like in your country. And so that was the proposition I was offering. And also, as we get bigger, as we get more votes, as we get the major party status recognition that allows us to not have to fight to just even get on the ballot in the first place. As those things happen, that odds of us being able to win goes up. And very often, if you're running as a libertarian, you are watering the seeds of a tree whose shade you may not live to enjoy. But that work has to be done by someone.
Now, the presidential campaign is one thing, but of course, there's elections up and down the spectrum. Everything from school boards through, to sheriffs and judges, and the American system has elections. It seems just about absolutely everywhere. So tell me a little bit about sort of more the grassroots movement, because I know that libertarians are having some tremendous success in some areas.
Yeah, hundreds of elected officials across the country. And that's actually, I guess, a secondary thing that we were doing as we were campaigning. Every event I did when I was running for vice president, I would have any local libertarians that were running for anything. I don't care if it was a borough of 200 people and they were running to be on the board. They got to have a few minutes to speak. School boards, sheriffs, any position, city council, county councils. You're right. We do have a lot of elected state legislators, all of this stuff, and we have gotten hundreds of people elected at these local and regional levels. And that does many things. The first thing it does is it kills the narrative that we can't win. Well, we do win, and when we win, you see the improvement that happens in your community. The second thing it does is it builds up a stable of recognizable candidates in that area who can then work their way up the chain. Well, yeah, I trusted them in the city council. I'll trust them in state state legislature.
Yeah.
I trust him there. I'll trust him as governor. Maybe one day as president. So it does that as well, and it also kind of helps reinvigorate our movement, because we very often can get discouraged if we keep losing and keep losing and keep losing, which is why I say we need to focus on the races that we can win. We need to run the presidential race. There are many reasons we have to run the bigger races. Some states won't even let you be on the ballot if you don't have candidates in those bigger races. So if for no other reason, you have to do that. But we need to focus on where we're actually winning hundreds of races across the country.
Yeah. Now, in the American presidential system, and I'm guessing in a lot of these other lower level elections as well, you don't have a preferential system. It tends to be a first past the post. I get a lot of pushback, a lot of resistance from Americans. They don't like even the idea of a preferential system. They sort of, I don't know, they view that as some progressive liberal idea. As an Australian, I find that very strange, because to me, having a preferential system gives a party like the Libertarian Party a much better shot.
Yeah.
Do you think reform is possible, or are you stuck with having to duke it out in this very stacked system?
It's always possible, but we have the additional problem that the people that would have to implement those changes at the state level are the very state legislators who are on the front lines of trying to keep us off the ballot in the first place.
Yeah.
These are the people who would have even more competition and couldn't just play the endless good cop, bad cop routine with their counterpart across the aisle. So, I mean, it is possible, and we actually have seen it in some places. Alaska has begun to implement it. Maine has begun to implement it. I believe Nebraska has it in certain elections as well. Some cities have introduced it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think I think rather than targeting them, we should be targeting the public and showing them that literally all this does is allow you to have more choices that you are voting for.
Yeah.
If you choose to just vote for one person and one person only, you can still do that.
Yeah.
But if you're saying, you know what, I support this person, but if they don't win, I would support this person next, then you have an opportunity to do that. And what it does, if that's implemented, it kills the wasted vote narrative, right? Because if someone says to me, Spike, I love what you're doing, I want to vote for you, I agree with you more than any of the other candidates for whatever I would be running for, hypothetically. If I vote for you, the person that I would pick second, if they lose because they didn't get my one vote, because that's how it works, but if they didn't get my vote, then this worst person would lose over here. Instead of having to argue with them about, well, you know, they're actually working together and you're getting screwed by a scam. Instead, I can say, okay, so then vote for them second.
Yeah.
Or vote for me second, whichever you want to do. Vote so that, and then if I don't win, then your vote goes to that candidate. It actually empowers voters by giving them more choices.
I think the preferential system is, there's different versions of it, but done correctly, I think it's far superior. But honestly, we have it in Australia, and most Australians don't even know how to use it. So there's still a massive voter education kind of problem that goes along with it.
But it's still there if you want to use it.
Yeah.
If no one wants to use it, if other people don't want to use it or don't know how to use it, fine, good. They can vote the way they've always voted. But if you do want to use it and you know how to use it, it's available.
Yeah. So what's next for Spike Cohen? Obviously, you're a former vice presidential candidate.
Yes.
You've expressed to me in the past that you're not that keen on running for office again. I don't know if you've changed your mind, perhaps, but that's where you were a couple of years ago or last year when we met in Australia.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
So right now, what's definitely next for me is we are continuing to expand You Are the Power.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so You Are the Power is a group I started. Right now it's here in the States, but we are working on having an Australia chapter of You Are the Power, so stay tuned for that. But what we do is we find people who are being abused by their local governments, and we organize our network of thousands of liberty activists across the country and help organize their local communities as well that are being harmed. And we don't stop fighting until we win. We've had I used to say we've had a 70% success rate, but as of the causes we've been working on last year, it's actually closer to 95% success rate. As we continue to grow, as our name begins to precede us, and as officials find out what happens when they're suddenly getting hundreds of emails and their social media is being filled up with notifications, and it's all people being brought to them by You Are the Power, telling them to stop doing whatever thing they're doing. They are much more quick to back off, and we are going to continue expanding that. We are reaching a point where we can work on dozens of causes at the same time, not just a few at a time.
Yeah.
We are building out our volunteer activist team so that we can be operating autonomously in every single region and state, and really, really exciting things coming down the road on that. And if you follow me on my social media, you'll see all the causes that I'm working on there. And also some potential international expansion, including into Australia. On the question of running for office,
Your enthusiasm.
That's my answer. There's my answer. That's the most honest answer I'll give. Is just a long pregnant pause with a sigh. I will do what I believe is best for this movement and, by extension, this party, the Libertarian Party.
Sure.
And if that turns out to be staying in my lane and just doubling, tripling down on you are the power, then I will do it. If it turns out that it's best for me to put a good team in place at You Are the Power and let them grow as they can and take the better part of a year and run for president, then I will do that. It is a decision that will need to be made very, very soon. And I feel like I sound like a politician. I'm prayerfully considering, like, if I'm being, I don't know yet. And I'm much closer to knowing than I was, say, when we were talking in Australia.
Last year.
But it is obviously a decision I need to make sooner than later. And when I do, you will know soon after, because I'm not going to be coy about it. I'm going to say I'm doing it or not doing it.
Well, I ran for the Senate in Australia, again, for our version of the Libertarian Party, which is now thankfully called the Libertarian Party. It didn't used to be. I'm very pleased about that name change.
Yes.
But it was a similar thing where you're running without any realistic prospect of getting it. Obviously, you can hope, you can dream, you can get the messaging out there and hope for the best. But ultimately, at this stage, it really is about brand building and, as you say, watering a seed for a plant that you may never get to enjoy the shade of. But Spike Cohen, I've certainly enjoyed this chat. Thank you so much.
And I just need to say, Topher, you are one of my heroes in this movement.
Thank you.
Because there are many people who have talked the talk. There are even many people who have walked the walk. But then there are people who have walked the walk and have faced persecution, and in your case, prosecution or threats of prosecution for that. Actual prosecution for it, and responded by saying, "Oh, well, I'm doubling down now. The fact that you're coming after me tells me I'm doing the right thing. I'm catching the flack, so I'm clearly over target. I'm gonna keep going until I can drop my bombs." And I probably shouldn't use that metaphor because they were. I can say that he didn't say anything about bombs. I did. You can't get me. But anyway, I think that when I see people that they face that and their responses go even deeper into it and don't stop fighting until you win, you have all my admiration. I love what you're doing, man.
Thank you so much.
Good people break bad laws.
They do indeed.